Holding this together, finger and thumb, let's see if that will cock the shutter. Got to hold down the film release lock button there. No, it's not. That arm's sticking out, it's cocked too far. So I've got the timing is slightly off and I need to revisit that. Well, the screws from this front cover are just too ugly to use really, so I'm looking for some suitable replacements in my spare parts that haven't got the heads chewed right out. Geez, that's not wonderful, but it's better than what we had. And they've become so damaged because someone's probably screwdriver slipped excessively, possibly because they hadn't cleaned the screw heads out, cleaned the glue out of the screw heads prior to trying to unscrew them. And so their screwdriver probably cammed out and damaged the heads. These things happen, it's just life. It's too long. And that one. That's not the right size head. These are the same size screws as on a Reflex S or Reflex 3. Okay, so here's their camera body. That's all ready to have the front put in place. I'll check that the shutter is released. It's sitting pretty much in the rest position. See if I can get the top cover. I'll hold that rangefinder coupling forward with my finger while I do this. Get that top of this front cover underneath the chrome trim at the top. That's all sitting in place. That all dropped neatly into place there. That doesn't mean that the timing's correct with the coupling of the gears, but it's a good start. So I'll run 4 screws through here, just loosely. I really want a good screw for that front position there. It should have one with no adhesive visible in it. Of course, this one, everything was all over the place. What do we got here? Is that one I want? That one will do nicely. It's nice and clean, just like I bought one. Alright, so I need to see if this will cock. This sawn down top cover I've got here doesn't hold down the lock lever, so I've just got to hold that down with my finger. And my film advance lever is not returning to the rest position. It suggests that I'm out here by a tooth or so. I'm just going to try something. I'm going to cheat. I'm going to loosen the screw on this plate, raise this plate, raise my rack back and hook it back one more notch. I can get at this other screw just. This is cheating, I just want to see if that's where my problem lies. That just dropped back into the rest position. Let's do those two screws up. Does the shutter release? Nothing. Yeah, it did. Let's try that down here with a nice slow speed that you can see. Cock the shutter. Shutter fires. One last test. It's quite critical, the meshing of these gears. If things are too tight, you'll find that it's unable to release the self-timer or the delay action, that it won't run down. So I'll just tighten those screws back up a bit more now. We'll try cocking this, and I'll set the self-timer. I'll set it. Let's release it at the body and see if it runs. Yeah, it's running down. And the shutter fires. So I've got my timing correct with my gears there. The next thing I need to do is set up to measure the distance from my lens mount here to the film plane. To do that, I'm going to put another top on this body so that I can use my cable release to hold the shutter open on B while I'm working. So first I'll remove that rewind knob I put on there temporarily, and its collar, which was missing from the camera. I had to find one for my spare parts. I've got a top cover. There's actually a Reflex S top cover which has been chopped away so I can use it on a Reflex S or a Retina IIIS because it's the same size. And I just want that because it'll hold this meter down firmly while I'm working on it. And I don't want the meter being disturbed, of course. So that can go on there. Put the screw in the end of the body at that point. I want a screw in the top plate here, at least one, just to hold it in place while I'm working. I can see one there that'll do the job. That'll keep the meter in place, stop anything falling out of position. It means I can cock the shutter. That's good. I can set the shutter to B. It's down at the bottom of that range there. That's good. And now I need to find my measuring gear. Well, here I'm going to use my calipers to measure this, get this set up correctly. So I've got to set this base up on my calipers. It'd be nice if I had a proper depth gauge, but of course I don't. This will do. That's good. So that's all set up there. And on the camera, I want to measure down to the film plane. So what I've got here is it's actually a pressure plate that I've modified so it drops right down and sits on the rails as the film would sit. If I hadn't relieved it at here and here, it would be held up on these points here. It's been relieved so it sits right down on the rails. and it's thin enough that the camera back will hold that in place without being a major fight. So I cock the shutter, I'll set it on B, I need to find the cable release, and then I'm in business. Put the cable release in place, and this cable release locks in the open position. So fire the shutter, shutter's open, it's all locked in position. Now the distance we're looking for is 47.6 millimeters between this front face and the film plane. I'm going to measure it as far as I can at 4 sides and see what I get. Four, 7, 6, 9, 4, 7, 7, 2, 4, 7, 7, 2, 4, 7, 7, 2. So I need to come in slightly. So I'll give each of those 3 about an 1/8 of a turn. And I'll see what I get. 4, 7, 6, 9, 4, 7, 6, 8, 4, 7, 7, 0, 4, 7, 7, 0. So we're still away. Tighten them a bit more. Tightening the screws is crushing those cup-shaped washers. 4, 7, 6, 7. Let's tighten that a bit more. Four, 7, 6, 4. 4, 7, 6, 8. 4, 7, 6, 6. 4, 7, 6, 4. 4, 7, 6, 5. 4, 7, 6, 4. 4, 7, 6, 3. 4, 7, 6, 2, 4, 7, 6, 1. They're pretty close. Let's try the other diagonal. 4, 7, 6, 1, 4, 7, 6, 3, 4, 7, 6, 2. Okay, we're just about there. Six O, 6 0, 6 1, I don't feel that screw's biting much. There must be some slight warp on this front plate. 6 2. 6 1, 6 0, 5 9, so we've gone too far. 6 1. Anyway, you can see what I'm doing. I'm just moving those numbers around. I'll get this all levelled out at 47.6 millimeters, and then we'll move on. That's all. We're all reading correctly now. That's all showing exactly as it should do. So my film plane distance here is correct. I can take that jig out, put it back in the box, and can carry on with the rest of the repair. Now what's needed here? The next thing I've got to do is put my rangefinder. Oh, I can put the shutter components in place on the front here, I think, first. Now, one of the tasks I have to do is get the coupling in for the meter. Now we preset all the cord and things down here, and that was set for B and f1.9. So I've got the coupling pinion here, which I will just lubricate lightly, particularly the end with molybdenum paste. This can be a bugger to wriggle into place, and basically I've got to get that in and couple it with the cable drum that's further back in there, which should be about that way up. Yeah, it's just dropped in. Yeah, that made a liar of me. Normally it's a hell of a job. Okay, and here's the pinion that couples to it. The shutter is set here at B, ready to couple with the rings. I've got to clean up these front rings. Now I notice that this is broken through, this is cracked through on the plastic here. I'll see if I can find another one of those. And these components all need to be cleaned. If these are dirty, if they've got grease and dirt and filth on them, it means that changing the shutter speeds and the apertures tends to be stiffer than it should be. So they just need to be cleaned with some naphtha. I'll clean up these three components. I'll see if I can find a replacement for this one. Hopefully this will all go smoothly. So far so good anyway, so we'll just get this cleaned up. This is quite grimy in here, and most likely that silvery grey colour we're seeing there is graphite grease, or the remote leftovers from graphite grease. So I'm trying to run around the edge of that. There's a bit of a lip there, and I don't want that, there's a bit of ingrained dirt. I want to get that out so that there's no rough spots there. This will do the job. It's most important that I don't leave any threads of cotton from the cotton buds in here. We don't want anything making this, clogging this up with anything we don't want. And the front ring here is most open to abuse, and so most likely to have dirt and filth on it from people's fingers, and dust and grit that's got down in between the surfaces. So I'm keen to get into this front edge here. There's a tiny shoulder there that is really good at clogging up with filth. That looks good. The spring here helps keep things, return things to their rest position, if you like. The Voigtlander Besomatic uses basically the same shutter setup, and that doesn't have a spring to do that job. Doesn't need one. I think it probably gets its tension from somewhere else in the system. Old grease on here is, often dried out, gone sticky, and stops things from rolling smoothly, or it's picked up a lot of dust. If old grease has picked up dust and grit, basically it acts like a grinding paste rather than a lubricant. That should be fine. That should be fine. I'll go and find a replacement for this. Well, I've sorted through my spare parts and I've chosen a suitable victim. I've got the front rings here off a shutter. Now, obviously someone took this one apart in a slightly different order. And this one shutter has come off a reflex camera because I can see it has no rangefinder coupling hole there in the front. But the ring we're after should suit us just nicely. Pop those all to one side. That filthy old mess. I'm having a look at this. Checking what state it's in. It seems to be sound. It's very filthy. I'll clean it and see how it goes. If it doesn't clean up, I'll just steal one of the knobs off it and we'll put it on our own one. But if it does clean up, I'll just use the whole thing. No point doing any extra work. Right, I'll compare it with my original to see which one's see if it's in a better cosmetic condition. Now our original one's actually better apart from that broken plastic piece. And I think both of them are cracked. Let's have another look. Try cleaning this a bit more. I'd rather not remove and replace both if I can help it, because there's a very good chance that I will break our donor parts just trying to get them off, which would sort of defeat the purpose. I think we'll use the entire donor part there. I'm confident that'll do the job for me better. A bit more cleaning on the inside and we're straight into it, I think. bring in the camera body. Now, where this couples to the shutter release at this point, this tab has to be able to slip out of joint at this point. So I'll put a bit of molybdenum paste in there so that that can lift out as it needs to. In the B position there, that's coupled correctly. There's a bit of dirt still trapped in there. I want to see the back of that. That's better. So that ring's sitting there correctly placed, and the other rings I need to assemble together. There's a little hook on here, hooks to this spring, so that this is under spring tension, and that tends to return it to its rest position. If I can get the spring hooked on there, stretch out the spring slightly, get the tab on this into the slot, and you can see that that's sprung loaded, tends to return to the rest position. Now that return spring on there, where's my molybdenum paste stick has gone. I'll just run up that spring with a wipe of molybdenum paste very lightly, just so that it moves smoothly on the inside of that body. That part's correct. I'll wipe lightly over the outside edge of this piece and lightly around the top edge here and here so that it moves freely, and this goes on in one position, and where this notch in the aluminium should come right up to the end of that notch there. And at that point, that's ready to lift onto the camera and set this on the camera so that the red dot's at the top, so that B and the red dot and f1.9 all come together at the same point. That went remarkably smoothly, and I only need to put the screws in place. We've got 3 screws. One of them was a bit uglier than the other ones, and I've got a disguise for that, so we'll just pick the 3 screws out. Make sure the pretty ones are where the pretty ones need to be, which is there. Might have 2 ugly ones when I look at these. Yeah, I've only got 1 ugly one. The ugly one I'm going to put at the top. And I'll disguise that later with a little blob of red paint, because that's the alignment spot for installing lenses, and putting a blob of red paint on that screw makes the alignment spot all that more obvious. Okay, so we've got our front rings in place. They're coupled to the meter cord. If we shift our things across, we can change the aperture setting. That's moving freely. You can see that the meter drum moves at the same time, so the aperture setting is good. Shutter speed settings are good. This rolls through its entire range. Can we get a 500th at f22? We can, so we have got the entire range is ready there and working. And that part of the job is done. Next up, dealing with the rangefinder. Let me clear the workbench. I've got a good selection of rubbish on the bench and parts we're no longer using. Rangefinder next.